You're listening to Canadian Women of the Outdoors podcast, the first podcast by Canadian women for Canadian women about Canadian women. Brought to you by Revolution Armory. Join the revolution. And True North Baits, superior quality fishing tackle. See what the fuss is about. For 10% off all plastics, use code CWO10. Enjoy the episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of Blazing the Trail with Lola. She's got some awesome stories coming up. I hope you guys are ready for it. The bear story is quite interesting. First of all, big shout out to our sponsors. We've got Revolution Armory and True North Baits, and also we have two new ones which I'm working on the intro with. We've got Decoy Daddy and Hotbox Huts. Big shout out to those guys, so give them a like, follow, share, subscribe, all the things. Otherwise, guys, I hope you enjoyed this part 2 with Lola. It's awesome. And then we'll be back next week with an awesome episode. Thank you, guys.
That's a lot of horses. Like, and they all stay like in one, like, I'm assuming it's like a stable. Like they're all in one area.
Yeah, so if you visit Banff, just head towards the outskirts of town, just across Bow River. You'll find, 3 old barns and huge pens filled with about almost just shy of 300 animals. So we have the 270 dude horses, the guest horses. We have just under 20 of those big draft horses. So those, the Belgians and the Percherons, those big horses that carry sleighs and carry wagons and princess carriages. And then we have about 60, I think around 60 mules. So those are those half donkey, half horse animals. So yeah, it's a lot of animals working for one company. Banff Trail Riders kind of has a bit of a monopoly on anything horse related in the Banff area.
What does that mean? Like what do you mean they have a monopoly?
They're kind of the big.
Yeah, that they own. Yeah, if you see anything to do with a horse in and around Banff, it's owned by Banff Trail Riders.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what that meant. That was my bad.
Well, speaking of animals, what other animals did you encounter? I'm sure you were, being that you were in the backwoods.
Did you see any rams and goats, mountain goats?
Oh, I would love to say I did. So mountain goats, we knew they were up there. I'd seen quite a few prints. So was fortunate enough to see a wolf out there. I'll talk about bears, but we wouldn't see a whole lot, but I'd see a lot of prints. I don't want to brag, but my coworkers often joke that I had like the best eye for spotting tracks out there, which I take a lot of pride in, because you'd be walking past a mud puddle and it looks like nothing, and I'm like, nope, there's a bear print right there. So my guests were always very excited. I got really excited to point out all the wolf prints and all the bear tracks that I saw this summer. And then I was very fortunate to see a cougar print, which is kind of scary. So
I want to see a cougar while I'm actually riding.
How big was that print?
About this. Well, I was gonna say the size of my hand, but I guess viewers can't see the size of my hand. I don't know, at least like 6 inches by like maybe 6 by 5 inches. And it's just one, and so it kind of shows how elusive they are. I love talking about wildlife because, again, a lot of people have questions about it, and my favorite part about being a guide is the education part. And so getting to educate folks that are scared of bears on why we shouldn't be scared of them was really fun. And yeah, so I would always, whip out. We had Parks Canada has a couple of trail cameras set up on some of the trails that we ride. And they were, have sent us the pictures. And so I would whip out those pictures at the lodges and be like, see, yep, there's mountain goats, there's bighorn sheep, there's black bears, There's mule deer, a lot of mule deer. Closer to town, we see a lot of elk. The local herd is about 150 head strong. And a couple weeks ago, the bull elk are in the rut. So if you do a 1 hour ride in, late September, you're going to be like 20 feet away from a big bull elk that's just lying down in the grass, which was super cool because as an Ontario kid, I've never been that close to an elk before. And here I am just riding past one,
That's the one thing. So my cousin got married in Banff, and it was in like October, like right in the middle of the rut. And the one thing I remember about being in Banff was seeing like all the elk and stuff like that. They actually had to close the school down, I think it was, because the elk were like all over the schoolyard and stuff. Like it's crazy how much you see those out there.
Yeah, they're everywhere, especially the end of the season. So towards end September, early October, they're everywhere, and we actually have to kind of chase them off the trail with a horse. This September, I was doing like a 1 hour ride. I was leading it on a really young horse who's still learning the ropes, and this big bull elk's just standing in the middle of the trail. So I call up the guide that's at the very back, and I ask her to kind of see if she can urge her horse forward and chase it off. But this bull elk was actually standing its ground, so we had to wait till he moved off the trail, which is quite, as a guide, you're kind of, that's super cool. Your guests are all pumped and taking pictures, but you still have to put safety first. So you're just kind of like, and you're trying to calm down this horse that's not too happy to be facing down a pretty big bull elk. So yeah, those are some of the fun little wildlife stories, I guess. Close
It's
encounters.
funny how, like, you mentioned like you didn't see a ton, but you saw lots of prints, and we always talk about how, like, we spend a lot of time in the bush at mom and dad's, and how often you're in the woods and you don't see something when they're there.
It's probably staring at you.
Yeah. You see the prints and you just think, okay, well, there's all these animals, and you see the track and you see the prints, and you're walking through the bush and you're thinking, well, where are you? Like, you're here. And it's incredible that they are so well hidden. And, even when you're in their country, it's the same situation, like you can be in the back 6-day ride and still they're staying hidden.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head there.
It's crazy.
Do you like carry any like firearms on you or anything to like protect yourself against like big things? Like, I know you said you carry bear spray, but does bear spray really work? Like,
so you're not allowed any firearms in the national parks.
Damn.
So you are not allowed a firearm. Sorry?
If a bear comes at you, you're spray and pray, essentially.
I did, like I mentioned, I do carry bear spray. I would be so hesitant to ever use it. I honestly, I would probably, what are you going to do if a bear is running at you? Yeah. First off, I'm with a bunch of large animals. Horses are not going to do well with bear spray. And what are you going to do? Oh, let me just test the wind direction and see which way the wind's blowing before I fire this bear spray. It was just very unrealistic. It was more like a safety, I guess, kind of a safety thing on paper. Like, the guide has bear spray with her. Obviously, I'm not familiar. I'm not a big hunter. I've fired a rifle a couple times, but I'm kind of glad that was not part of my job. To ever have to, carry rifles and worry about that. So on the topic of kind of large animals coming at you, I've got a really good bear story.
Let's hear this.
Are we ready for the big bear story?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of this story, but not the whole account.
Yeah, so super, super cool experience. Not in the moment though. So I've seen, a handful of bears out in Banff National Park riding the trails, and they're always very fleeting. Like, they want nothing to do with us. So 99% of the time, they're off the trail before, the person behind me even sees it. There's again, we just talked about, like, there's a lot of evidence of them out there. There's no skunks in Banff National Park, but you sometimes get a whiff of like something stinky, and you're like, oh, that's a bear. And sometimes your horse kind of looks alert and looks off into the bush. But I'd always call the mule Itchy. I would say was like my bear radar. And so if he was on edge, then I knew it was like, okay, it's actually something. Because remember, the mule is a lot smarter than a horse.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the horse would look alert and I'd be like, oh, whatever. But if the mule and the horse were alert, looking off in the distance, depending on the crowd, like, I would just strike up conversation. I'm not going to announce it to my guests, like, hey guys, I think there's a bear in here somewhere. But I would just strike up conversation because that would, deter the bear from coming to see what we were all about anyways. So that's kind of normally what happens. But on May 28th of this year, I got to stand face to face with the boss. So if anyone knows anything about Banff National Park, they've probably heard about this legendary bear. So the boss is bear number 122. He has like sired 70% of the grizzly bear population in the park. He's been hit by the train twice and survived. Like, he's known to cannibalize black bears. He's like, I don't even know, 600 pounds, over 22 years old. Like, this is the king of, one of Canada's most legendary national parks. And I didn't realize it at the time, of course. But, we're just riding along on a regular trip. I had 3 guests with me and a really close friend who was another guide. And so we're riding along early in the season. And of course, we're an hour away from the lodge. So late afternoon, when this giant bear pops out of the woods and walks across the trail. But we start yelling because that's normal protocol. And he just stopped, looked at me, and started walking straight towards me.
No, thank
And
you.
like, right. And I'm 25. I haven't lived that much. So to say that was the scariest moment of my life is like that sinking feeling of having this, I look at it and I'm like, oh shit, that's a grizzly. Like, and it's walking right towards you. And the craziest part about the story is that these 2 animals, the one that you're, riding and the mule that you're holding, are so loyal to me that they're literally waiting for the stupid little human on their back to tell them, yep, it's okay to turn around, even though their instincts are telling them, like, run away from this beast. So we turn around and we kind of head up the trail quite a bit. I'm so thankful that I had my friend Natalie with me. She, shout out to Nat, she kept the guests really calm. She was really good at that. So she was kind of interacting with them, like making sure they were okay because they were very beginner riders. And their horses were not happy, obviously. I always say that the reason that no one came off was because we had those 3 guests sandwiched right between our very perfect horses that were, again, I can't stress how amazing these horses are at their job. So meanwhile, I'm riding kind of one-handed mule and my horse's reins on my steering wheel, all in my left hand, and I've got the inReach tied to my belt. And I'm like kind of frantically type away, shoot off some messages because I knew we had coworkers coming down the trail. And I sent a message to Erica, our manager in town, like, hey, there's a big bear following us, and we've turned around. And so we kind of stop at one point and we're like, okay, maybe he's gone off the trail. And we're so close to the lodge, like, it's Nat and I making the decisions. We're like, okay, well, let's just see if we can head on up. So with like hesitation, urge our urge my horses forward. And of course, there's like one section of the trail where it's kind of like a ridge, so I can't see what's coming. And lo and behold, he pops up like 25 feet in front of me. And there's a brief moment where I was like, do I charge this thing? And then I was like, no,
No.
absolutely not. But again, like, oh shit, he's right there. Just turn my animals around. And so for the rest of the afternoon, Nat would wait with the guest, down a hill or around a corner, and I would wait up on the hill or, around the bend. And I would just wait and watch, and like the adrenaline that's running through your body and that sinking feeling every time you see this giant black figure, pop up over the next corner and yell out to the others, like, we've got time, he's still following. A couple times he stood on his back legs to itch on a tree. He was like well over like 7.5 feet tall. I cannot stress how big this bear is. So he, at this point, I've gotten a hold of Erica's like, okay, well, we're on our way. So I just imagine how she rode out of the barn, her and 3 other riders. So a little cavalry of 4 coming to our rescue to push off this bear. And so they get to us, and we're within like an hour of town at this point. And so she's like, okay, Lola, like, calmly tell me where this bear was. And I'm sitting on the top of a hill, and I'm like, yeah, well, 5 minutes he was here and here. So, and then I turn and look down the hill, and I'm like, oh, just kidding, he's right there.
Oh my God.
Now I need to stress that Erica is a badass woman. Like, she has seen and done some crazy stuff. And her reaction gave me so much validity, like made us feel so much better about how we were handling the situation. I don't know how much I can swear on this podcast, but the words that came out of her mouth, yeah, she literally took one look at this bear and was like, holy fucking shit, turn the fuck around. So we're like, okay, this is pretty big. So Nat and I got the guests all the way back to the barns. That's the longest I've sat in a saddle consecutively. So I can't imagine how these poor beginner riders were feeling. We offered them, first aid, like electrolytes, because, they weren't anticipating on sitting in a saddle for I don't know how long. It must have been like 4.5 or some hours.
No,
because we left lunch and we were riding up, and we were almost to the camp when we saw this thing. So the rest of the story goes he managed to go all the way back. He walked all the way into town, and
the bear.
He walked right behind our barns. I literally have pictures and videos. We were sitting on top of the fence watching this giant black figure walk behind the barns and over the train tracks, over the highway. He was heading north, and we were just in his way. I'll never forget Nat's reaction when, the Parks Canada employee told her, like, it was the boss. Because you have to understand, for the last, like, year and a half, I've been talking about this legendary bear. Like, it's part of our 1-hour spiel, like, that we tell all the tourists. So it was, it was kind of a little bit of PTSD afterwards, having to, every corner, every hill, I was kind of, like, really nervous about in the weeks after. But then Erica was like, well, you're never going to see anything as crazy as that. So, like, nothing's going to be as big as that bear. So that kind of helped me through it. And talking about it to guests, like, I would hype up this story. Like, I have so much more detail I could get into, but I would hype this story up and tell my guests on, like, the last night of our 6-day trip. And so a lot of guests are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Encouraging. Like, they were really helped me work through kind of the fear of it. And they were like, what a cool experience Mother Nature gave you. Like, how cool is it that I got to see the baddest bear in Canada, that up close? And Parks Canada told my boss and told everyone, like, we should be celebrating. No one was hurt. All the animals were safe. The bear didn't have to, get put down or anything like that. So, we can all just be thankful that I have a really cool story to tell.
But, like, also, that's crazy because, like, That's crazy because you got to see a bear that I don't know if I need to see a bear that up close and personal myself. I'm trying to shoot it because that's.
And even then, that's just a black bear, and black bears don't usually get that big. Grizzlies are like.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, because like, what is it they say with black bears? You can just be loud and noisy and try and be bigger than them, and it scares them away. But grizzlies, you can't do that.
No.
Like,
no.
They're just like, I'm not afraid of you. And like, they're fast too. Like, that would, like, you basically got stalked by a bear, essentially.
Yeah, and like, that's the thing. It's like, they have the upper hand. Not only is it's their habitat, but they are faster than a horse, and especially in that terrain. But that's the thing, looking back on it, he's the biggest, baddest bear in the park. So that is his shtick. You know, he can just walk confidently down the middle of the trail, the easiest path to take, and everything else will move for him. And that's what I find scary too, is that he doesn't see us as like a couple riders, a mule and a horse and humans. Like, we're weird, large animals walking confidently in the middle of daylight too. Like, he should be just as scared of us as we are of him, but he wasn't. But the thing is, he never showed any signs of aggression. He never bluff charged. He was just walking, and we were in his way. Yeah.
And as you said, like, your bear spray would have been worse than useless at that point.
Yeah. And so, that's and so again, I'm very happy that I don't have to carry a firearm in the national park, because I'm not qualified to, and that would have been tragic in my opinion. I'm all for conservation and the best way to mitigate human wildlife encounters is to educate. And it's so fun that I get to every week this summer tell that story, but also do some bear education at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that happened right at the beginning of your season too. Like, quite a way to kick off the season, eh?
Yeah, right. Here we go.
Massive bear, welcome to the new season. We're gonna just start with a grizzly encounter.
Yeah, I mean, again, it can't get any like crazier than that, is kind of what I had in my head. So
now you're going off on another adventure, I hear.
Yeah.
A new adventure. So what's that about? What's that entail? What's the next adventure for Lola?
Yeah, so part 2 of the adventures of Lola, I guess. As I mentioned at the very beginning, Australia has always been a dream of mine. And
mine too.
Yeah, right? Like, how sick. A lot warmer. Banff was cold, so I'm ready for the heat. And I met a lot of really cool Australians and Kiwis and Brits in Banff. There's so many international workers there that are all very like-minded. You know, we're kind of living our best life and don't really have plans to settle down anytime soon. So a lot of the folks that work at Banff Trail Riders are farm kids, station kids, we call them, from Australia. And their stories just blew me away. And I was like, I need to do this. So that's the next adventure. January 10th, I'm flying to Brisbane and kind of got some jobs lined up with guests that I had on these backcountry trips. I had a couple Australians that have invited me back to their places, so that's super cool. And a couple really close friends that I'm hoping to work for some of their parents and such, and work on some cattle stations. So as much as I loved doing this and the tourism side of it, I'm kind of ready to gear away from tourism and kind of start using my agricultural degrees and working in livestock production and do some horseback riding out there and round up cattle on horseback,
Yeah, they have a lot of really scary animals too there, so be careful down there.
Those ones you can't see though. You can't see.
Yeah, those are all the ones.
Venomous, they're not poisonous.
Okay.
Reptiles.
They're the things that bite. Yes. I like to live where the air hurts my face. So
yeah.
It's a common misconception. Snakes and reptiles and things like that, they're not poisonous. They're venomous. They're envenomated.
Okay, so you'd be fine by all the spiders out there?
Yes. Yes.
We
Yes.
won't talk about who saves you from the spiders in here.
It was one time.
Oh, I feel like that's a good story too.
Yeah, I want to go to Australia because like I'm a huge reptile girl. Like I love gators and snakes and all that kind of stuff. Like I want to wrestle some gators and crocs and all that stuff. I love that. But that's really cool. So you're going to be working on cattle farms out there? Like, now this may be a really silly question. Is it like beef farms or like dairy farms or?
So mostly beef. There are some dairies out there, but I'm looking to do beef cattle. They still kind of do it. If you've ever seen videos of mustering cattle, that's when they use the helicopters. That's when they use like the motorbikes and horses to gather up. If you can imagine, like easily 5,000 cows on a property, they round them all up and work the cattle that way. So that, and then while I'm there, I'll go check out New Zealand. As I mentioned, I had some friends that I met there. Right? Like, come on. While I'm there, I gotta see New Zealand and the dairy farms. They have a lot more dairy out there. So
and how long are you going to be gone on that adventure for?
So the visa's for a year. It's a working holiday visa. If anyone's interested, it's visa 417, and you do 88 days of specific work within specific fields, and agriculture and working on cattle stations is on that list. So if you do those 88 days, you can easily apply for a second year. And the way that everyone's talking to me about Australia, I'm like, yeah, I'll probably do 2 years there. Make it worth my while. There's so much to see and do and learn. So, yeah.
Just be like, from you have seen The Man from Snowy River, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Oh, well, see, she isn't a horse girl, so she hasn't seen that. But that's like
Nicole's got a weird look on her face. Add it to the list, like, Nicole. You gotta watch this.
The horse movie.
Didn't you say that about Seabiscuit?
Well, that's like the new horse movie, but like the OG, like original.
I haven't seen Seabiscuit either, so.
The Man from Snowy River is like what everyone has this like idea you're gonna do when you go to Australia and do what she's gonna do is basically what she's gonna be doing.
Hopefully, but yeah, without all the the drama of it, I guess.
Yeah, the drama and maybe no galloping down a giant hill.
So it's kind of like Yellowstone, but like Australia.
And like really old in the 80s. Yeah. 80s? It was an old movie.
I don't know. I had a lot of ladies told me I had to watch it this summer, so I finally got to watch it this summer.
Yes.
That's that's really cool. I mean, like, so you're traveling all over like the parts of Australia to do that? Like you're going to like the west side and
I think later on, like I'm gonna kind of settle down and work for a place for a while and kind of learn the ropes, and then kind of make my way around. I don't know. I actually scratch that. I don't know. I didn't realize when I left for Banff in May of 2023. I told myself I would only be there till October, and it turned into 2 summer seasons and a winter season out there because I just loved what I was doing. I felt I could learn more, so I stuck around for longer. So I imagine I'm going to have the same feelings with this adventure.
You mentioned you did a winter season. What did your winter season look like?
Yeah, so the winter we do sleigh driving. So as I mentioned, we have about 20 of those big draft horses. So if you've ever seen like a Budweiser commercial, like the big Clydesdales pulling the Budweiser cart.
What Clydesdale is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we don't have that breed, but if you can imagine horses like that pulling a sleigh, yeah, that is what we do, which is very magical. If you can imagine Banff in the wintertime on the snow on all the mountains. Yeah, and it's very scenic, and then some beautiful black horses with sleigh bells. I got so sick of the bells though. Oh my god, imagine hearing sleigh bells like all winter long, but I loved it because again, it was such a different skill. Like I've never done that before, and how cool is it to work at a company that offered me, the chance to learn all these different, it's still horses, but there's so much, like any hobby or any industry, there's so many like cans of worms that you can open and rabbit holes to fall into. So yeah, I got to learn how to drive horses, which is not, for anyone that's not horsey, it's not the same as sitting on a horse. It's quite different.
I'm terrified of driving, actually. Like driving, I'm not comfortable with it. I have no knowledge of it, and the idea of it.
That means you're just sitting on like a
cart.
Okay.
Yes.
Or a sleigh.
Okay. And you're just like, you're kind of like Santa, but with it's not reindeer. Right?
Exactly.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's right. But
exactly. That's exactly how I felt.
This is why I'm here.
Yeah. So, okay, now, was that just like around town that you did that, or is there like trails that you do for that as well?
Yeah, so we have some trails really close to the barns. And the cool thing about the wintertime is that all the elk are down in the valley. So you would be driving this sleigh right through the herd of elk. Like I would stop and we would be in the middle of a herd of elk, and they're all just like, sitting down, chewing their food, and you get to see
that didn't spook the horses or anything like that?
No, not like, this is again why I say that these horses were utterly amazing. They were so good at their jobs. They just, this is normal. And how crazy is it? Because again, we have guests from all over the world. And so you just pull up and there's like 3 fluffy coyotes that look super beautiful, not like the mangy ones that you find here in Ontario.
Yeah.
And you just pull up right beside these coyotes and get to show some, people from Singapore that, are raised in a concrete jungle, how stunning the Canadian landscape and wildlife is. And they have so many crazy, beautiful questions too. And, and then you have the Texans on the sleigh ride and they're all freezing their ass off. So you cut the sleigh ride a little short because they can't hit -25.
I'm impressed that the horses don't spook. Like, could you imagine Shy?
No, our horses are not well behaved compared to that. I would not trust our horses. Definitely Cheyenne will kill me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Again, our horses here. When they probably turn and run if they were face to face with a bear. But again, when you realize,
and they run.
Well, what was she scared of yesterday on the trail ride? The corn stalks?
The corn stalk was moving. It was very terrifying. And I was like, a bear? I would just be like, forget it, I'm dead. I'm just dead.
That's when you just hold on.
That's awesome. Okay, well, we've definitely got a good chunk of time in right now. We're going to have to put this in 2-part episodes. And I think when you get started in Australia, we might have to do parts 3 and 4 once you get into Australia working.
Absolutely. Especially because we can do this virtual. Like, we'll have to
I think is Australia 12 hours ahead or behind?
From here, it's 14 hours ahead to Brisbane. So.
Okay. I don't know. So when you fly to Australia, are you going from like here to Europe down, or are you going to go to like the other way? Like, are you traveling back?
Yeah, we travel like back.
I'm like, where are we going with this one?
It's like, so I'm leaving Toronto on January 10th, and then I'm flying into like LAX, so Los Angeles.
Going back in time.
Yeah, and then I'm flying to Brisbane, but because Brisbane's 14 hours ahead of Toronto time, I'm going to land in Brisbane January 12th in the morning. I don't know how it works. I'm not a geologist or cart reader, a map reader, but January 11th is
I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. Yeah. I'm not the only one. Geography, I get. I'm
not geologist. It's
I'm the same way. I always confuse geology and geography.
Geology is rocks.
The Earth is made up of rocks, so it's technically the same.
Oh dear.
Australia is one big rock, an island, continent, whatever you want to call it. So
stop talking. Just stop. Shovel your head.
Sorry, we kind of froze a second.
Anyway,
to our listeners, I'm sorry.
That's, of course, right at the end.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Yeah, right at the end.
There's
There,
some.
are you there?
Okay, I think we're back. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, to recover like, and it just lost me again. Oh my goodness.
I can hear you.
Anyway, okay. I lost my train of thought completely.
That doesn't matter. I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about all of those cool adventures. Like, it's definitely neat to have something different.
And you would definitely qualify as someone who's outdoors, because that 6 days of riding, yeah, that's definitely outdoors.
Yeah. And it's so like, I honestly didn't even know that was a thing until Caitlin told me that you like, and his daughter was, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I definitely want to have her on. Like, I didn't even know that was a job that you could do. I didn't know something that was offered like as an excursion. So it's definitely really neat. And like, you've been full of stories and like just sharing your experiences. Like, now we got to go to Banff and do that.
We got to do more trail rides here first before I take you on a day ride, because it's going to be a really long ride.
Yeah,
Like,
speaking from your guide's perspective, we do appreciate it if you have a couple hours under your belt. If you're doing like the overnight trips that I talked about. But you can go do a 1 hour ride, no problem. You'd be fine.
Yeah, we're going to work on that. Goals.
Goals. Within the next 5 years, out to Banff. That's the plan. 5 years.
Yeah, I think it'd be very cool.
Yeah.
I meant to ask you before I forget. Do you guys have to wear helmets when you're doing all this?
So on the front country, on those 1, 2, 3 hour rides, you do. On the back country trips, it is up to the guests if they want to wear a helmet or not. And I had about 50-50. 50% of the guests would wear helmets. Myself, our uniform is a cowboy hat. So I did not wear a helmet. I realize that's not the not the smartest to not wear a helmet on some of the terrain we're on, but yeah,
that's why I was wondering about that. Just because, like, if it's rocky and stuff like that, like, that's kind of I'd probably wear a helmet.
Yeah, because all it takes is one. Like, it can be anything, your horse can be the best horse in the world, and all it takes is a stumble from someone who was literally, I've done a somersault in the saddle when my horse tripped and fell. It was no fault of my own or the horse. He literally fell. And when we were landing, I remember looking up and his hoof was coming directly down towards my head. And at the last second, I went like this, and he grazed me and he clipped my shoulder. And I had like a hoof print on my shoulder. Had I been a few seconds later, that hoof was coming down on my skull and I would have been dead. You are on. My stance on it, because it's one of those things I've seen.
Well, it's one of those things that I kind of want to, I don't know, help break the stigma around, because again, we're in like this Western cowboy culture, and I understand it's our uniform to wear a cowboy hat, but as a guide, I did have the option to wear a helmet. But it's also like part of the get up, people are paying to have this like Western-y experience and have the guide wear a cowboy hat like the good old Western days. I would like to see that, I don't know, the stigma broken down, because I did feel it. Like, I didn't want to be the one coworker wearing a helmet, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's looking back, I'm like, like, you're totally right, Caitlin. I have seen it. I've had guests come off and be like, I'm so happy I was wearing a helmet, and like, yeah, you're right. So yeah, safety. It's kind of hypocritical of me to be like, safety is first and foremost in my mind, and I always push safety, and then I'm not wearing my own helmet. So
Well, it's the peer pressure, and when you're in a, you kind of feel like that, as you say, that pressure to conform to what everyone else is doing, or else you're the oddball out. And it's something that in the Western horse world is still very much a stigma. You're seeing it slowly get better in Ontario, I think, people wearing helmets, but definitely out west, the cowboys wear a hat.
yeah.
So
Anyway, that was my last question because I just remembered that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure like it's one of those conversations I'm sure you're gonna hang up and be like, oh, I meant to ask that. Or I'm gonna be like looking at my notes like, oh, I meant to mention that. But
I'll probably be lying in bed later and be like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
But we'll have to have you back.
work?
We'll definitely have to have you back on again because I want to hear about the Australia adventures and what you get up to out there because that's again really cool as hell. Like go be a cattle farmer in Australia.
mm-hmm.
So like that's so cool. Like
and
that's just from you made at this other job. Like
and it's opportunities for like, people who are younger, maybe thinking like maybe I'm not ready to enter the workforce in a traditional way. Maybe there's other things out there. And like I remember I once wanted to go out west and I didn't. And I wish I always had because life happens and then you do run out of time almost. Like when you three kids, my ship has kind of sailed for the time being that I'm not going out west to work on, backcountry trail guiding with 3 children. Unfortunately, that's just
the reality of it. And that's why I was so excited to come on here too. And because again, had Mom not done this trail ride in 2016, I would have probably never heard of this company and never thought to do this. And I do like to stress I'm very proud and I do encourage like going to get your education first because I can always fall back on it. So I never really felt stranded because I'm like, you know what, if I don't like this job, I'll just come home and find a job in the career I studied for. Was really good security net. So go live your best life, but I do encourage get some education first, just so you always have a backup plan and then, free ball it because that's what I'm doing. I'm having a lot of fun, but and do it while you can. So.
Yeah, you're 25. You're like the perfect age to be doing that stuff. Like, again, I wish I'd have done more stuff when I was 25. Like,
but you get to do it now with your family too. Right, little like all your hunting and fishing adventures. So that's pretty cool.
Very much so.
Yes, that is really cool. Anyway, thank you again so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
No problem. Can't wait to hear about all the Australia adventures. Like, I'm very much looking forward to hearing about all that. But anyway, listeners, thank you guys for listening. Listeners, thank you for listening. Rambling again. We'll be back next week. Give us a like, share, subscribe, follow, all the good fun stuff on the Instagram and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Anyways, thank you again, Lola.
See ya.
Yeah, perfect. Bye.